welcome, and this is the Wednesday, September 30th, 2020 meeting of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that all 5 supervisors are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. Additionally, before we begin, any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the Clerk of the Board's webpage. I'll remind members of the public that have requested to speak to wait to dial into the meeting until the item is called. With that, I'll now call the roll. Supervisor Jacob?
Here.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Present.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Here.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Here.
Chairman Cox?
Here. Before we get into the land use items on today's agenda, we will first have a report from our closed session from yesterday afternoon, and I'll call on the County Council to give us that report.
Thank you. The Board of Supervisors met in closed session starting at 10:46 a.m. and adjourning at 11:48 a.m. The Board took the following reportable actions. Item 24D, initiation of litigation, with all 5 board members voting aye, direct County Council to file a lawsuit against Cone, Inc. for failing to properly maintain elevators in numerous county buildings as required by contract, and for submitting false invoices seeking payment.
Additionally, yesterday, prior to the board recessing into closed session, it was noted that on closed session item 24D, the board would be discussing a challenge to the board's authority to expand the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board's investigative authority under the county charter. That item was actually 24C, and this correction will be reflected in the minutes from yesterday's meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for the closed session report. The next item on our agenda is non-agenda public communications. It's my understanding we have 1 speaker. And I believe that's in a written form, so I'm going to ask the clerk of the board to go ahead and read that communication at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first non-agenda public comment is from Mark Garcia. It reads, to the Board of Supervisors, are you prepared for legal action and the costs associated with it for your unlawful actions by not terminating the local health emergency as required by law? Can you tell me why you support my being harassed in places of business when our state civil code protects me from discrimination based on my medical condition and allows for my free and equal access to all business establishments of any kind whatsoever? California Civil Code 51, Section 7. Mr. Chairman, that concludes non-agenda public comments this morning.
Thank you. We'll move on now to approval of the statement of proceedings and the minutes for the meeting of September 16th, 2020. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Jacobs, seconded by Vice Chair Jim Desmond. Is there any discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the formation of the consent calendar. We only have 4 items on our regular agenda, and I believe 1 on the Air Pollution Control District agenda. All items on the agenda today will be considered routine and will be enacted upon by 1 motion unless there's a desire on the part of the public or members of the board to pull items for further discussion. Let me start off by asking the clerk of the board if there's been any items pulled by the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 1 has been pulled by the public. Item 4 has been pulled by the public. Item 1 on the County of San Diego Air Pollution Control Board has been pulled by the public. All the remaining items on the Board of Supervisors agenda, as well as the County of San Diego Sanitation District agenda, may be placed on the consent calendar for your board's consideration.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the board members, starting with Supervisor Jacob. Do you have any items to pull or additional comments to make?
Mr. Chairman, no, and I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, Supervisor Gaspar.
I have no further comments or items to pull. I'll second the motion.
Okay, Supervisor Fletcher.
No items to pull.
Okay, Vice Chairman Desmond.
No further items to pull. Thank you.
All right, we will then be voting now on the consent calendar. I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and identify those items that we'll be voting on. And again, the motion to approve the consent calendar was made by Supervisor Jacobs, seconded by Supervisor Gaspar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board will be voting on all items except items 1, 4, and air pollution control item 1, And with that motion, item 3 introduces an ordinance amending section 72.161.35.5 and adding section 72.166.2 of the San Diego County Code relating to speed limits on county-maintained roads in San Diego, and introduces an ordinance amending section 72.243.21 of the San Diego County Code establishing a weight limit on county-maintained roads in San Diego County. The consent calendar also includes all the items on the County of San Diego Sanitation District agenda.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying in other words is we're really voting on items number 2 and 3.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yep.
With that, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob,
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar,
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond.
Aye.
Chairman Cox, the motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is an appeal of the environmental determination for the KA Shell gas station and convenience store. So my understanding that we have 2 group presentations, one by the appellant and one by the applicant, and then 10 individual speakers. Do we have a staff presentation on this item?
Yes, we do.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and proceed to hear the staff presentation first.
Before the staff begins their presentation, any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Cox and Supervisors. I'm Sean Oberbauer with Planning and Development Services. Today, I'll be presenting on item number 1, which is the appeal of the environmental determination for the KA Shell gas station and convenience store project. On May 21st, 2020, the zoning administrator found the project in conformance with section 15183 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. The zoning administrator's environmental determination is being appealed. The department is before you today recommending denial of the appeal and upholding the environmental determination for the project. The following slides provide background information related to CEQA Section 15183, the permits related to the project, and an analysis of the points of the appeal. CEQA Section 15183 requires that if a project is consistent with the zoning of the property and land use designation established by the general plan and does not result in peculiar impacts that were not analyzed by the general plan EIR, it should not require extensive environmental review. The zoning administrator found the project in conformance with CEQA Section 15183 on May 21st, 2020, because the proposed use is consistent with the zoning use regulations and no significant or peculiar impacts not already identified in the general plan EIR would result from implementation of the project. The board can take one of the following actions on the appeal of the environmental determination. 1, the board can deny the appeal and uphold the zoning administrator's environmental determination of the project, which found the project in conformance with CEQA Section 15183. If the appeal is denied, the director's decision of approval of the project will become effective. Or 2, grant the appeal and remand the environmental determination to staff and the zoning administrator for reconsideration or direction for staff to prepare environmental documentation for a superseding environmental determination. The project site, identified by the red star, is located east of Interstate 15 within the Hidden Meadows community in I-15 Design Review Corridor of the North County Metropolitan Subregional Plan Area. The city of Escondido is located 1 mile south of the project site, and the Boulder Oaks Golf Club is located over a mile northeast of the project site. Existing uses in the project vicinity consist of an ARCO gas station and a fire station on the west side of I-15, vacant land, and residential uses. On August 7, 2020, an attorney on behalf of Mesa Rock Road LLC filed an appeal of the 15183 environmental determination for the project. Mesa Rock Road LLC owns and operates the ARCO gas station and convenience store located approximately 950 feet west of the proposed project. The appeal is in accordance with the County Administrative Code and can only be considered by the board after all administrative appeals have been completed. The director's decision of approval for the project was upheld by the Planning Commission at an appeal hearing on July 31st, 2020. The decision of approval for the project permits have been stayed until action has been taken by the board for the appeal of the environmental determination. Construction for the project is proposed on a 1.61 acre property at the southwest corner of Deer Springs Road and North Center City Parkway. The property is developed with an existing patio furniture sales store permitted by an approved major use permit. The project site is zoned for general commercial uses with a general commercial general plan designation and is subject to the I-15 design guidelines. The site plan would allow for the construction and operation of a gas station and convenience store, and the proposed boundary adjustment with a certificate of compliance would confirm the acreage of 2 existing legal lots to consist of 1.23 and 1.61 acres. The project consists of the demolition of an existing patio furniture sales structure and the construction of a 3,500 square foot convenience store, a 5,983 square foot canopy with a total of 16 gas pump spaces, and 19 parking spaces. The Hidden Meadows Community Sponsor Group and I-15 Design Review Board recommended approval of the project with recommendations that were incorporated into the project analysis and design. The site plan and boundary adjustment permit approvals have been placed on stay and are not being considered by the board.
The request to appeal the environmental determination focuses on 4 main points. Specifically, the appeal focuses on the lack of access to sanitary sewer and the use of a septic system, traffic impacts, stormwater improvements, and greenhouse gas emissions. The appellant states that the project does not qualify for CEQA Section 15183 because the lack of sanitary sewer for commercial development is peculiar to the site. The project proposes the use of a septic system, which will be permitted through the Department of Environmental Health, or DEH, in accordance with the Local Agency Management Program, or LAMP. LAMP was developed with the Regional Water Quality Control Board to adopt regulations allowing the use of septic systems while protecting water quality and public health. The preliminary design for the project has been reviewed and approved by DEH, and the final design will be reviewed during final engineering. The lack of sanitary sewer is not unusual for commercial developments. The existing Arco gas station on the western side of I-15 is also served by a septic system. The appellant states that the traffic impact analysis fails to fully consider the increase in traffic on North Center City Parkway, Deer Springs Road, and Mountain Meadow Road. The appellant also states that traffic impacts will not be mitigated by payment of the Transportation Impact Fee, or TIF, because it is unlikely the traffic improvements identified in the mobility element will be built. The traffic study for the project concluded it will not have a significant impact on surrounding roads. All road segments and intersections within the project vicinity will operate at an acceptable level of service using the criteria outlined in the county's traffic guidelines. Additionally, according to the San Diego Association of Governments, the majority of trips for gas stations and convenience stores are considered diverted or pass-by trips, which means that these trips are related to drivers on their way to another location stopping to get gas or use the convenience store. Also, the project has been conditioned to pay into the TIF program, which was in effect when the project was approved, and those funds, along with funds from other development, will continue to be used for road improvements based on the county's mobility element. The payment of the TIF will mitigate the project's cumulative impacts. The appellant states that the stormwater improvements are inadequate and the project fails to minimize impervious surfaces, resulting in impacts that were not considered in the general plan EIR. A priority development project stormwater quality management plan was prepared for the project and demonstrates that the project will comply with all requirements of the county's Watershed Protection Ordinance and the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board. The project uses Site Design Best Management Practices, or BMPs, in the form of tree wells and a structural BMP in the form of a biofiltration basin. The project minimizes impervious surfaces by only developing the northern portion of the site, with the remaining portions of the project site dedicated to septic and other pervious surfaces. Lastly, the appellant states that the greenhouse gas analysis is inadequate and relies on the Climate Action Plan, or CAP, that has been set aside by the San Diego Superior Court. The appellant also states that the project does not comply with the CAP checklist and greenhouse gas mitigation under the CAP, and the general plan because the greenhouse gas emissions are underestimated. The project's GHG emissions were analyzed under several criteria. The project's GHG emissions were calculated and compared to the 900 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent California Air Pollution Control Officers Association guidance threshold that is used to screen out projects from further GHG analysis. This threshold is used to identify projects that are small and are efficient enough to not generate substantial GHG emissions and have less than significant impacts. The GHG for the project study, it concluded that the project would result in 607 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, which is less than the 900 metric ton threshold. The project was also analyzed for consistency with the County of San Diego's 2018 CAP, and the project was required to prepare a CAP checklist, which outlined measures such as water reduction requirements for landscaping to be implemented as part of the project. The preparation of a CAP checklist was required for projects approved prior to the court ruling on the 2018 CAP, which ordered the county to set aside its approval of the CAP on June 12, 2020. The GHG emissions have not been underestimated for the project. The appellant noted that the GHG analysis applied a second reduction to the number of trips called a pass-by reduction. This type of reduction is used for gas stations because they generate a lower volume of traffic and most visitors stop by the gas station on their way to another location. As a result of the comment, the GHG analysis was revised to remove this second reduction. Based on the revised analysis, the GHG emissions from the project would be lower than what was originally estimated in the GHG analysis and still below the screening level threshold. As a result, the project will not have a significant GHG impact. Based on staff's analysis, we recommend the Board of Supervisors take the following actions. First, deny the appeal and uphold the environmental determination of the zoning administrator, finding the project in conformance with CEQA Section 15183 because the proposed use is consistent with the zoning and general plan and no significant or peculiar impacts not already identified in the general plan EIR would result from implementation of the project. Second, require the applicant to enter into an agreement to defend and indemnify the county in accordance with County Code Section 86.201 in the amount of $350,000 and authorize the Director of PDS to execute the agreement. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask if my colleagues have any questions before we get to the two group presentations.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah, Vice Chairman Desmond.
Is the appellant in that gas station on septic now as well?
Supervisor Desmond through the chair. That's correct. The existing Arco gas station across the freeway is on septic as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we have two group presentations. I'm going to allow each of them 15 minutes. We'll start off with the appellant group presentation. So if the clerk would go ahead and call them up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also note for the record that we received 42 e-comments on this item. As the chairman noted, we'll be beginning with the appellant group presentation. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. Then each of the speakers will need to press *6 to unmute their phones. Each caller is requested to state their name for the audio record, and each individual must provide testimony during your 15 minutes. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. And I'll remind all the speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Erin, if you could identify the group presentation, please.
Yes, thank you. The appellants consist of 3901, 9769, and 0760. And you should all press *6 to unmute yourselves now, and then you can self-regulate your time.
Good morning, Chairman Cox and Supervisors. This is Julie Hamilton. I represent the appellant, Mesa Rock Road, LLC. I am assuming I'm on slide 1. I'd like to go to slide 2 quickly, and then slide 3 quickly. You already know the project description and you already know the project location. On slide 4, we're asking that you grant the appeal because the project will have significant impacts on traffic and greenhouse gases, and because the project does not comply with the General Plan Update EIR. Let's go to slide 5. In order to qualify for an exemption under CEQA Guidelines Section 15183, there can be no project-specific significant effects which are peculiar to the project. This guideline section is intended to be used on infill projects. And the problem with this particular situation is that this is not an infill project. Yes, this is a project that's consistent with the general plan, it's consistent with zoning. but it's not consistent with the general plan EIR, which is also required, and it doesn't meet all of the required mitigation measures for the EIR. And again, this is because of the isolated nature of the project, which is peculiar to this project. It's not an infill project. It is a gas station on the other side of the freeway that is isolated from any other development. And the question before you is not what's going on with the ARCO station and not what happened to the ARCO station, because the ARCO station was built before the general plan update. It was built before we considered greenhouse gases, and a lot of things has changed since that ARCO station was built. The project is not consistent with the CAP. It doesn't mitigate GHG impacts as required by the EIR, and it doesn't mitigate traffic impacts as required by the EIR. And in talking about the EIR, I am talking about the general plan update EIR. You have a bigger problem, and your bigger problem is that you have another item on this agenda later in the day in which you plan to set aside the climate action plan, set aside the EIR mitigation measures. Therefore, you don't have a general plan with a certified EIR. So again, you can't apply this exemption. It's not whether or not you can approve the project. The question is whether or not you can approve the project with a categorical exemption, or whether or not you need to do further environmental analysis. Let's go to slide 6. Slide 6 summarizes the problems with the traffic. And as your staff pointed out, the transportation impact fee isn't going to work. Transportation impact fees are designed to mitigate the regional impacts from smaller projects in the region, but they depend on collecting enough TIF to actually build the circulation element roads. Recently, you've had most of your North County projects rejected by the voters, that being Lilac Hills Ranch and Newland Sierra. Without those projects, you're not going to be able to collect enough TIF to actually make the traffic improvements necessary, which would be the widening of Deer Springs Road so that this project would not have a significant impact on the Deer Springs Road segment from Mesa Rock Road to the I-15 southbound ramps. You have a safety problem. The mitigation measures also require that you comply with the county road standards. Well, the county road standards would require 600 feet of sight distance in this area, and in fact, you have 300 feet of sight distance. So you don't meet that mitigation of the EIR. The traffic study underestimates traffic volumes at the project driveway, and it doesn't even evaluate the impacts at the project driveway and North Center City Parkway. The biggest issue you have is that this project will have direct and significant impacts on traffic at the roadway segment of Deer Springs Road and Mesa Rock Road, and no mitigation is required. That's a significant impact that was not considered in the EIR for the GPU, and that cannot be resolved by the TIF without the necessary TIF fees to pay for the improvements to circulation element roads. I'm going to quickly go to greenhouse gases, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brian Estrada from Arcane Engineering, who performed these reviews for us. The numbers used in greenhouse gases were grossly underestimated. I'm going to let Brian go through that in detail. They didn't use enough ADT in their Cal-EE modeling, and then they took an absurd percentage of those trips for pass-by trips, which resulted in them underestimating their GHG emissions by 1,500 metric tons, which means that now, with the proper analysis, they exceed the CAPCO screening threshold per metric tons, and their GHG would be a significant impact. Now, they can do something to mitigate that, but that hasn't been done in this analysis. And the biggest problem with this project is it's simply not consistent with the climate action plan. It's not located in a county village that would support mixed use and transit-oriented development. There are no multimodal roadways with multimodal facilities. But the real issue, and this goes back to the county village issue, is you can't do some of the simple GHG mitigation measures, such as shared parking or electric vehicle charging. And why can't you do that? Because you're not near anything to share parking, and nobody's going to stay long enough to charge their vehicles because there's nothing around. It's just a gas station. And that's where it really becomes a problem, and where it becomes peculiar is because it's out on its own and it's not an infill project. I would like Brian Estrada to now address traffic and greenhouse gases, and after that, I'll have Wayne Chang address drainage.
For the group's benefit, you have 9 minutes remaining.
Hi, good morning. This is Brian Estrada with Arcane Engineering Group. I will just very briefly highlight some of the findings that we found on our review of the traffic impact study and greenhouse gas study. RK Engineering has extensive background and experience in reviewing and performing traffic impact studies and greenhouse gas emissions analyses. One of the primary issues we found with the traffic impact study was the direct impact to the roadway segment of Deer Springs Road. This was identified as a significant impact per the county's traffic impact study guidelines. However, the impact was sort of dismissed and instead evaluated based off of the intersection analysis. Those are two different criteria under the county's guidelines. And so that impact of a roadway segment should have been further evaluated and potentially mitigated. Also, as was mentioned, the site distance at the project driveway may present a potential design hazard, which can be evaluated under CEQA as a significant impact. And so limiting that site distance does create a potential conflict with cars coming in and out of the site. On the greenhouse gas emissions, the primary thing here, without getting into too much of the technical details, was that greenhouse gas emissions are quantified primarily based off of mobile emissions, cars coming to and from the site. To estimate that, typically in a CEQA analysis, you are using the trip generation out of the traffic impact study, and that you want to see both the technical analysis for traffic and the technical analysis for greenhouse gas emissions to be consistent. That was not the case here. In fact, the traffic impact study estimated approximately 2,500 daily trips, while the greenhouse gas study used only 1,812 daily trips. Furthermore, as was mentioned, there were pass-by credits taken, which are appropriate for a gas station. However, the pass-by percentage estimated in the traffic impact study was only 28%, whereas the greenhouse gas analysis used up to 86% pass-by and diverted trips. So the greenhouse gas study used significantly more credit than what was assumed to be appropriate in the traffic impact study. With those two things being inconsistent, you have then a significantly lower estimate of greenhouse gas emissions than what would have been had the findings of the traffic study been applied. That is really a highlight of RK's findings and concludes my brief presentation.
So good morning. I'm Wayne Chang with Chang Consultants, and I'm a civil engineer that specializes in drainage and water quality. And I want to discuss the drainage and water quality deficiencies with the project. So first, stormwater quality management plan was prepared for the project as required by county regulations. And one of the primary best management practices proposed for treating stormwater at the site are a series of tree wells. Tree wells are designed based on a certain mature tree canopy size and also required soil volume to support the tree. My review found that the project design does not provide for the required soil volume. There are several of the tree wells that were undersized according to the needs. So there is a deficiency in the water quality design for one of the primary best management practices. In addition, the water quality regulations encourage the inclusion of pervious surfaces within projects, since infiltration of stormwater has been determined to be quite beneficial. Despite this requirement, the project proposes minimal pervious surfaces, except for the tree wells. In addition, the rooftops don't drain onto pervious surfaces or utilize dispersion, which is a typical design goal. Therefore, the project is lacking in the requirement to implement pervious surfaces for that infiltration benefit. Next, the project report did not identify source control best management practices, which are typical requirements of a project. And then finally, a portion of the project runoff flows onto North Center City Parkway, immediately adjacent to the project. That runoff is not being proposed to be treated. So there's a deficiency there as well. So in summary, since stormwater is a major design consideration of projects, I believe that these issues should be addressed in order for project approval.
Can you tell me how much time we have left, please?
You have 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you. I want to go back and summarize why this project doesn't qualify for an exemption under Section 15183 of the CEQA guidelines. In order to qualify for this exemption, you have to be consistent with the community plan, the general plan zoning, and the general plan has to have an EIR. And you have to be consistent with the mitigation measures included in that EIR. And this project is not consistent with those mitigation measures. Mitigation measure TRA-1.3 requires implementation of the county public road standards during review of new development projects. This doesn't meet the county road standards because of the site distance issue. Implementation measure TRA 1.7 requires implementation of the TIF. And as I said, the TIF won't defray the cost of widening Deer Springs Road because it's unlikely or not reasonably foreseeable that development in the area will support enough funding of the TIF to make these improvements, in particular the lost of Newland Sierra and Lilac Hills Ranch. Let's go to greenhouse gases. It's not consistent with the goals of the greenhouse gas of the climate action plan because the project is not located in a county village, does not improve roadways with multimodal facilities, does not include shared parking, does not promote alternative fuel or include electrical vehicle charging, and the project does not include on-site carbon sequestration or investment into local carbon sequestration projects. It's also not consistent with the implementation measures or the mitigation measures for greenhouse gases. It exceeds the CEQA thresholds, and you have problems that you are well aware of with your climate action plan. But what it comes down to is it's not whether or not you approve or deny this project. It's whether or not this project qualifies for the exemption that has been applied to the project, and it does not. It does not because the project does not comply with the mitigation measures of the General Plan Update EIR. As I've said before, you have a decision coming before you this afternoon that would rescind your approval of the EIR mitigation measures for the General Plan Update. That would definitely eliminate this project from being considered for an exemption because there's no longer a General Plan EIR. This is not the project that we need to use to test that theory. This project simply needs to go back and do the appropriate environmental analysis and not rely on an exemption. An exemption is inappropriate and this project does not qualify for that exemption. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the group presentation. We will now move on to the individual speakers, and we'll begin with the applicant.
Yes, we have an applicant video, and I believe the caller with last four digits 8175 wanted to introduce that video. So we'll unmute you now if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we'll play the video.
And before you begin speaking for the individual speakers, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Walter Rusnick of Rusnick Law Offices on behalf of the appellants or the applicant. We do have a video that can show. We'll let that play, and then I would like to address some of the false information that was provided in the presentation made by the appellant. And we have our experts online if we need any specific questions from the board. So I'll let that play right now. Thank you.
Good morning. KA appreciates the opportunity to thank county staff for working with it over the past 3 years to get this project approved, and the opportunity to address the reasons why the board should confirm the director's finding that the 15183 exemption from CEQA applies to the project. The project is a simple one, a gas station mini-mart next to Interstate 15 that is consistent with the general plan and zoning ordinance. The project has strong local support, and more than 80 persons submitted comments in favor of the project during the approval process. In fact, The lone opponent to the project is the appellant, which owns property across Interstate 15, where a competing Arco gas station, Mini Mart, is located. Appellant has opposed the project because delaying KA's competing project is in appellant's financial interest. The 15183 exemption that the director applied here is a statutory exemption that limits CEQA review of projects that are consistent with a general plan for which an EIR has been certified, such as the county's general plan. Because the project is consistent with the general plan and there is a certified EIR, no further CEQA review can be required unless substantial evidence shows that the project will cause an environmental effect that is both peculiar and was not addressed as a significant effect in the general plan EIR. An environmental effect is peculiar only if it is characteristic of only the project, which is a high bar. An effect also is not peculiar if a project must comply with uniformly applied development policies or standards, which is the case here. Appellant raises the same issues before the board that the Planning Commission unanimously rejected in upholding use of the 15183 exemption. Those issues were addressed by the county in its presentation and so are not individually discussed here. But appellant provides no evidence that the project would cause any environmental effects, that any of those alleged effects are peculiar, or that any of those alleged effects will not be addressed by compliance with county development standards. For example, the project will use a septic system, but that is not peculiar because appellant shows no environmental effects of using that system. Appellant's ARCO facility uses a septic system, and the new system will meet county standards. Appellant also provides no evidence that any of the effects it alleges will occur were not addressed in the general plan EIR, since it fails to meet either threshold requirement to challenge the exemption. The appeal is without merit. We note that the project also will comply with valid general plan mitigation measures by paying the TIF to address potential cumulative impacts and meeting landscaping requirements to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. By denying the appeal, the board will also reject appellant's claims that the TIF program itself is invalid and that the county cannot approve any projects without a climate action plan. Neither of those arguments is valid. We note that KA did conduct environmental studies of such effects as traffic impacts, greenhouse gas emissions, and drainage. None of these studies found that the project would cause any significant impacts. For these reasons, the board should deny the appeal and confirm the director's finding that the 15183 exemption applies to the project. Thank you. We're available to take questions if you have any.
And that concludes the video. I believe the next member of the applicant's team is 6180. If you'd like to state your name for the record and begin your testimony, 6180.
Hello. Am I on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, sorry. My name is Eugene Marini. I'm with the team, the KA Enterprises team. We've worked, just want to kind of point out, we've worked really long and hard on this. We've gotten the I-15 corridor design group approval. We've gone back to the residents of the, in the back, their community group, and twice gotten approval on this project. We've had many, many e-comments for this project. And just to kind of show that there is a demand for this project. To put that aside, I also want to point out that we've spent extensive hours analyzing every single item that's been pointed out by the appellant, reanalyzing, running different scenarios, being more conservative, and we still fall under all the thresholds they bring up. To some degree, it feels like, you know, the block of commercial competition here is kind of wasting a lot of time and money. So with that, I really wish the board sees what's happening here, sees that they're trying to call into the general plan, call it out and basically say it's invalid, call out the TIF program, basically say that's invalid, which is just a little absurd over a small gas station off a freeway. So I really hope the board sees this and upholds the decision made earlier by the Planning Commission to deny this appeal. And we have our whole team here if you guys want to get into any detailed questions on some of these items. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll unmute the other members of the team, 6390 and 8620, if you'd like to state your names for the record and if you have anything to add with your remaining time.
This is Walter Rusneck. I think I should be unmuted as well. Let me just address some of the issues that were raised by. Yeah, thank you. That was raised by the appellant. First of all, 15183 exemption does not solely apply to infill projects. That's totally improper characterization. It's a statutory exemption that sets a high bar intended to streamline the review of projects that are consistent with the general plan, which this is. And in addition, the argument that the general plan EIR was set aside is also false. The court ruling only applied to the EIR for the climate action plan, and even the court rulings clearly indicated that what they were looking at were projects that needed general plan amendments and needed offset mitigation, which this project does not need. On the traffic impacts, our direct impacts are not significant. They've been determined that by a number of traffic studies. And by the way, the other thing is that now new guidance issued by the county for vehicle miles traveled, which is the new significance threshold, this project would be exempt from any CEQA traffic review because it's less than 50,000 square feet. So there's no reason to do any additional traffic review. Some of the other issues raised, by the way, such as site distance, these are issues that were not raised in the original appeal and are barred by the county ordinance that governs what issues can be addressed in the appeal. They weren't filed, and the documents were not filed at the time the appeal was filed. And then just briefly on GHG impacts, we've done a number of analyses, and the analysis done by the appellant in this case assumes that 70% of traffic to this project would come from 9 miles or more away. In other words, that the main customers for this project at Interstate 15 and Deer Springs Road would come from Oceanside and Carlsbad. And that's just a ludicrous assumption, and that's why their numbers come out as ridiculous as they are. And so there's no reason that this appeal should go forward any further. It should be denied, and the board should confirm that the director made the correct decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Did anyone else from the applicant wish to speak? (6390) or 8620? If not, then we'll move on to our individual speaker in favor, or I guess we'll have one individual speaker in favor, 1971.
I'm actually with the applicant. I'm the expert that prepared the greenhouse gas analysis. For some reason, I wasn't able to sign in as part of the team. I really have no comments to make. I'm available for questions if there are any.
Great, thank you.
Can you state your name?
I'm sorry, William Maddox with Rincon Consulting.
Great, then that concludes public testimony on this item, Chairman Cox.
Oh.
Very good. Now we'll get into board discussion. Is there any questions or comments members of the board would like to make? And I believe Vice Chairman Desmond wants to.
Oh, you read my mind. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, you know, and I know the staff has already given a presentation, and I have full faith and confidence in our planning director's determination on this. Could I just ask staff to briefly, you know, explain why the exemption of 15183 CEQA guidelines applies here, and you know the confidence they have in this in their recommendation?
Supervisor Desmond through the chair. The 15183 exemption applies to projects that are consistent with the general plan and the zoning for the site. This particular site is zoned for commercial and it allows a gas station use. That was analyzed in the general plan EIR. There are also no peculiar impacts based on the analyses that we've done related to traffic, site distance, stormwater, or greenhouse gas emissions that would warrant further environmental analysis. CEQA Section 15183 also mandates that we streamline projects that are consistent with the general plan, like the project that's proposed today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion and first of all, thank our Planning and Development Services for their thorough analysis and for their presentation, for the appellant's presentation, the applicant's presentation was all very thoroughly done and expressed. I've reviewed this project in detail in all the points of the appeal. And I agree, I don't think this project creates any peculiar impacts. It's a gas station, kitty corner from another gas station along the I-15, and it does fall still under the level of service as opposed to the vehicle miles traveled criteria because of when it was processed. And I believe the zoning administrator's environmental determination is appropriate. So in addition, as already mentioned, the Hidden Meadows Sponsor Group recommended approval of the project. The Planning Commission voted to approve the project. The staff is recommending the board deny the appeal and approve the environmental determination made by our experts. So for those reasons, I'll make a move to approve staff's recommendation to deny the appeal of the environmental determination and uphold the environmental determination of our zoning administrator. And also, as stated in the staff presentation, that KA Enterprises to enter into a defense and indemnification agreement with the County of San Diego in case there's any lawsuits over this. So I'll move to approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to acknowledge Supervisor Gaspar on the second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion by Vice Chairman Jim Desmond, seconded by Supervisor Gaspar to deny the appeal and the other associated resolutions. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Right, the last item we have on our regular agenda is a resolution rescinding and vacating adoption, excuse me, of the final climate action plan. And I believe we have a staff presentation and at least 4 individual speakers on this item. So I'll ask staff if they would like to do their presentation at this time.
Thank you, Chairman. We're making this switch from the team from the last agenda item to the CAP team.
While that switch is being made, any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Thank you.
Testing? There we go. Good morning, Chairman Cox and Board. My name is Kelly Bray, and I am the Climate Action Plan Project Manager for Planning and Development Services. Today, we are presenting a proposed resolution to rescind and vacate the county's 2018 Climate Action Plan as required by the State of California Appellate Court. In February 2018, the Board of Supervisors adopted the Climate Action Plan, or CAP, and related environmental findings, including a final supplemental environmental impact report. The county's CAP is a greenhouse gas or GHG reduction plan to reduce emissions associated with the development of the county's general plan, and government operations in accordance with state GHG reduction targets. The CAP establishes GHG reduction targets for 2020 and 2030 and contains a series of 26 measures that the county can implement to achieve the targets. Through 2019, the CAP measures have reduced the county's GHG emissions by 130,075 metric tons of emissions, which is approximately 98% of the 2020 GHG reduction target. Upon adoption of the CAP, petitioners filed actions challenging the CAP and final SEIR. On December 24, 2018, the Superior Court ruled that the CAP is inconsistent with the county's general plan, and its approval did not comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The county appealed this determination, and on June 12, 2020, the appellate court overturned the Superior Court determination that the CAP is inconsistent with the county's general plan, but it affirmed the Superior Court's decision that the CAP does not comply with CEQA. The court is requiring the county to set aside and vacate the approval of the CAP, the certification of the final SEIR, and related actions. The county's 2018 CAP contains 26 measures to reduce approximately 897,145 metric tons of emissions by 2030. While the 2018 CAP is required to be rescinded, the appellate court ruled that its 26 reduction measures are CEQA compliant. The county intends to continue implementing the 26 measures to reduce GHG emissions to meet the state's 2030 target until such time as the CAP update is adopted. The next steps for the county are to update the CAP and prepare a revised supplemental EIR to respond to the requirements set forth in the appellate court's decision. The CAP update will include an updated baseline inventory and projections of GHG emissions through 2050. The supplemental EIR will have additional analysis, including evaluation of cumulative impacts and the development of additional alternatives, including for smart growth, as discussed in the appellate court's decision. Planning and Development Services will engage stakeholders on the CAP update and supplemental EIR process and return to the Board of Supervisors. Today's request is for the board to adopt a resolution to rescind the 2018 CAP and final SEIR, related environmental findings, and associated actions, which will rescind and vacate the following: adopted final climate action plan, adopted CAP CEQA findings, guidelines for determining significance for climate change, resolution number 18-020, which established the CAP GHG threshold of significance, the CAP consistency review checklist, report format and content requirements for climate change, resolution number 18-021, which updated the general plan EIR mitigation measures, CC 1.2, CC 1.7, and CC 1.8, and resolution number 18-022, which amended the general plan goal, COS 20, and policy COS 20.1. This concludes our presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. And let me ask my colleagues if they have any questions of staff before you get into the public comments. Seeing none, I believe we have 4 individual speakers on this item, and I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and call them at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. We'll also note for the record that we received 15 e-comments on this item. We did have 4 requests to speak on this item. So far, 1 individual has called in. We'll be identifying you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted, and the caller will need to press *6 to unmute their phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. Erin, if you could please identify the first caller.
Yes, our first caller is 6608.
Good morning, Chair and Supervisors. This is Matthew Vasilakis, Co-Director of Policy at Climate Action Campaign, urging the board to rescind the CAP and promptly get to work on creating a robust, legally binding, and defensible climate action plan. The courts have made clear that the county must make a good faith effort to develop a CAP that meets state law to reduce emissions and protect us from the climate crisis. The county should proceed with a robust public outreach program halt any consideration of climate-busting sprawl projects, and work closely with key stakeholders on this critical document. Additionally, we urge the county to steer clear of offset schemes and develop a CEQA-qualified cap that centers equitable strategies to protect our most vulnerable. As heat storms, wildfires, and sea level rise threaten our communities, only real reduction measures and strategies can get us to a climate-safe and ready future. Please rescind this fatally flawed cap. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other callers on the line at this time for this item.
Okay, let me ask my colleagues if they have any questions of staff or if there's a desire to make a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, and a few brief comments. I think let's hope here the third time is a charm in terms of doing this right. In the decade it's taken us to get to this point, the impacts of climate change have only become more significant, more pronounced, and more real. 2020 is the worst wildfire season in record in the state of California. It's also the hottest with the most changes in storms and lightning strikes and temperature. We've seen the impacts of record droughts and then flooding. We are faced with the confronting reality here locally where we continue to set new records for the hottest days ever. Heat waves over Labor Day with temperatures recorded along the coastline that can be deadly. Climate change is real, it is here, and we have to take actions and put forward policies that align with that reality. And so I'm looking forward to a robust public engagement on the development of a legally compliant climate action plan. We know we need to reduce our vehicle miles traveled, transform our transportation sector, prepare for 100% clean energy. We also have a very exciting new mandate in California to get on the pathway to 100% electric vehicles for new car sales by 2035. And so we want to make sure that our climate action plan is aligning with all of these opportunities. We have an opportunity to learn from so many of the jurisdictions that have had legally compliant caps that will actually reduce emissions. And we have a chance to update it with today's science, today's data, and knowing what we know now. And so I look forward to us moving forward as a region and really getting a solid climate action plan, legally defensible, in place that will serve the needs of our residents. So I'm happy to make the motion to approve this, and I think it's time for all of us to get to work on a new cap.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman. My only comment is I just hope we get it right this time. Way too much money's been spent. Way too much time has been wasted. So let's get it right this time.
Okay, I believe Vice Chairman Desmond.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I appreciate, this item's coming forward, and I think this is more of a perfunctory action as required by the courts. However, I am willing to work towards a rational, reasonable plan that makes clean air and water for everyone today and in the future. So thank you. I'll be supporting the item.
Very good. I believe we have one of the other speakers that has been able to call in now. So I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and introduce them.
Thank you, Chairman Cox.
Yes, our next caller is 6879. 6879, if you'd like to hit *6 now and then state your name for the record, please.
Dear Chair and Board of Supervisors, my name is Cody Harrison, and I'm speaking to you today as a graduate of Duke University with a degree in environmental science and policy, and as a business owner that has been operating in the environmental sector for 10 years now. I'm here to urge the board to rescind the county cap and promptly get to work on creating a robust, legally binding, and defensible climate action plan. The courts have made clear that the county must make a good faith effort to develop a cap that meets state law to reduce emissions and protect us from the climate crisis. The current cap does neither. Greenhouse gases are a key component of global climate change, but reducing local emissions to zero does nothing to impact the climate of the San Diego region should other jurisdictions fail to act, which I believe is likely. That is not to say that we do not have an incredibly strong incentive to decarbonize our electricity and transportation sectors and built environment, though. If you do the accounting of social harm caused by non-greenhouse gas air pollution, you will see clear as day that you have a moral obligation to remove this harm from our communities and environment. Doing this would yield the co-benefit of reducing emissions. Make no mistake, we must do this. But I suspect that in order to protect the San Diego region from the climate crisis, we must look beyond greenhouse gases. Thankfully, the IPCC and other researchers have given us some powerful pressure points that may have far more co-benefits for our region than reducing GHGs. I would like to direct your attention to the IPCC's 2019 Special Report on Climate Change and Land, which addresses topics such as desertification, land degradation, sustainable land management, food security, as well as greenhouse gas fluxes in terrestrial ecosystems. This report makes clear with high scientific confidence that things like wetter soil decrease the severity of heat waves. Wet soil is just one pressure point I will mention here to keep this concise, but many potential non-greenhouse gas pressure points for regional climate are outlined in this report. And I'm confident that these pressure points will be far cheaper and more impactful to our local communities than many of the actions outlined in the current caps. In addition to moving toward 100% renewable energy with all haste, we must also add focus to regenerating our ecosystems, rehydrating our landscapes, restoring healthy forests, and moving aggressively toward regenerative agriculture, both on land and in the ocean. If we do this, we can make San Diego a world leader in climate action while also addressing our other environmental crises such as biodiversity loss, disruptions to the nitrogen, phosphorus, and water cycles, and land system change. We can create thousands of good jobs, improve human health and well-being, and make sure San Diego is a desirable destination for generations to come. If you continue on this path of focus purely on greenhouse gases, I foresee a carbon neutral but completely desertified San Diego in 2050. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item, Chairman Cox.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, we appreciate the public speakers on this item. We do have a motion by Supervisor Fletcher, seconded by Vice Chairman Desmond. Is there any additional board comments?
Mr. Chairman, I seconded.
Supervisor Jacob was the second. I'm sorry. Any further board comments? If not, will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob.
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar.
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond.
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Okay, that completes our regular agenda. We do have one item on our Air Pollution Control District agenda. It is a support for the Community Emissions Reduction Plan. This item was brought forward by Supervisor Nathan Fletcher. Supervisor Fletcher, do you have any introductory comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm excited to bring this item forward to make changes at our APCD by dedicating two of our existing staff to focus on environmental justice issues. A significant responsibility of the Air Pollution Control District is lowering emissions from stationary sources, and a specific function is to tackle issues of environmental justice in our most polluted communities. We know there's significant change on the horizon for APCD with Assembly Bill 423, the recent state audit, which gave us a lot to think about as we rebuild and restructured this organization. The California Air Resources Board is in the process of conducting their own audit. There's a separate look at the incentive programs. And I think all of these steps are going to provide us on the path to an agency that fully commits itself to protect public health and advance clean air in our communities that breathe dirty air. I've said it time and again, and I'll continue to emphasize that a child in Barrio Logan is 8 times more likely to have asthma than a child in La Jolla. We have historically cited dirty, polluting industries in areas where low-income people of color live, and we have to do a better job in tackling this basic injustice. We all deserve to breathe clean air. We also know that we've had challenges recently in our ability to effectively communicate in a timely way, in a language appropriate way. We saw this with some confusion around Navy ship fires. We want to increase our ability to test, communicate, let folks know what dangers are there or not there, what actions that they ought to be taking. And these are all a part of basic environmental justice issues. Today, we're going to hear from a number of the AB 617 Steering Committee members. And I specifically want to thank Sandy Naranjo with Mothers Out Front for being a powerful voice and advocating for our community, David Flores with the Environmental Health Coalition, and so many others that are a part of the coalition and effort that is working to tackle these issues. In our August budget, which we approved, we added several new staff to the Air Pollution Control District. This proposal today simply asks for 2 of those staffs to focus on environmental justice issues, specifically developing strategies to engage stakeholders and the AB 617 community in policy, budget development, priority setting, and that these staff should help shape agency programs, including both our community emissions reduction program, our permit fee structure, our APCD rule development, community air protection program, facilitating multilingual community relations. Beyond successful implementation of the requirements of AB 617, these positions are needed to support the integral work of APCD with a focus on equity. As a board, we have taken a number of steps and dedicated a number of actions to tackle issues of equity in the operations of county government. And this is appropriate that we take a similar step now meeting as the board for the Air Pollution Control District. We want to make sure there's an emphasis on mitigating local air quality impacts. We know poor air quality disproportionately impacts some of our communities and neighborhoods, and we need to do a better job. We're also today going to hear from the Harvard researcher who has shown that people living in areas of higher pollution are more likely to become seriously ill or die from COVID-19. And again, your probability of contracting COVID-19 or dying from it should not be impacted by the quality of air that you breathe. We know that the pandemic and air quality issues hit in particular our South Bay and Portside communities very severely, and this proposal helps to support equity, environmental justice, and will pave the way to have an informed transition over the coming year for Air Pollution Control District. I sit as the governor's appointee to the Air Resources Board, where I work regularly with a very large and robust dedicated staff to environmental justice. And I think that that serves as a guidepost to help inform and shape the policies that we are doing. And I'm hopeful actions we're taking can be a model for other air districts in the state, just like the upcoming restructuring of our board and our agency will be. Today represents an opportunity for us to take a step forward as the APCD in the district, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Supervisor, did you wish to make a motion at this time?
Motion to approve.
I would second that motion. I would note that we have 16 public communication speakers. Is there any questions of the supervisor or staff before we get into the public communication?
I just have the comment after the public comments.
Okay, thanks. Very good. Let's go ahead and proceed then to the public speakers on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also note that we received 10 e-comments on this item. We have 11 callers on the line to address the board. We'll be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You'll then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. And I'll remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Thank you. Aaron, if you could please identify the first caller.
Yes, our first caller is 7749.
Hi there. My name is Connor Franklin Ray. I'm with Sunrise Movement San Diego, which is a member of the San Diego Green New Deal Alliance. As a resident of La Mesa, which is in District 2, I urge the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board to hire environmental justice staff. Hiring dedicated environmental justice staff will help with institutional transformation for the San Diego Air Pollution Control District Board and ensure equity and racial justice at the center of all agency decisions. As I'm sure you all know, according to the Cal Enviro Screen 3.0, San Diego has the 6th worst air pollution in the country, and that is particularly bad in neighborhoods such as Barrio Logan, in the western part of National City, which rank in the top 5 to 15% of the most polluted neighborhoods in California. It is crucial now more than ever that our county act to reduce exposure to pollution and improve the public health and safety in our communities. And with the adoption of AB 423, we have a unique opportunity to restructure our San Diego Air Pollution Control Board to center equity and environmental justice at its core by hiring staff who are dedicated to improving the lives of those who have suffered for far too long. To better serve communities that have been disproportionately impacted by toxic pollution, the environmental justice staff must have staff and leadership with deep experience in environmental justice issues and who are knowledgeable about the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, skilled in community organizing, and are bilingual. They must be equal to other comparable staff and have autonomy to make decisions and be sufficiently staffed and funded with comparable salaries. Please vote to protect our communities from the emerging threats of toxic pollution and COVID-19 by hiring dedicated environmental justice staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1522.
Good morning, San Diego County Board of Supervisors. My name is Susan Orlovsky, and I'm an active retiree from UCSD with my union, University Professional Technical Employees, Communication Workers of America. We have a committee, the UPT Green New Deal Committee, and I'm also speaking as a mother. My son lives in Barrio Logan, and Barrio Logan, as you just heard, as well as National City, the western part of National City, they rank in the top 5 to 15% most polluted neighborhoods in California. And as we just heard, San Diego is known as having the 6th worst air quality in the country. So I urge the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board to hire environmental justice staff. Hiring dedicated environmental justice staff will help with transforming the San Diego Air Pollution Control District board. And it is obvious that this board, it was unveiled recently, that it is inadequately able to respond to the needs of communities suffering from toxic air pollution. It failed to protect communities from the toxic fumes emitted from the Navy ship fire, USS Bonhomme Richard. So to better serve our communities that have been disproportionately impacted by toxic pollution, I urge you to hire environmental justice staff that have deep experience in environmental justice issues and who are knowledgeable about the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous, and Latinx, skilled in community organizing, and who are bilingual. These staff should be equal to other comparable staff and have autonomy to make decisions and be sufficiently staffed and funded with comparable salaries. Please vote to protect our communities from the emerging threats of toxic pollution and COVID-19 by hiring dedicated environmental justice staff. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7315.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Sylvia Calzada, a born and raised San Diego, currently residing in the city of National City, District 1. I'm here as a resident to request and emphasize the importance of hiring a specialized workforce for the Air Pollution Control District in the Department of Environmental Justice. The aftermath of the ship fire of USS Bonhomme Richard not only shaken the neighborhoods in the National City and around the county, but it opened up to various questions and concerns regarding prompt response in environmental emergencies and how agencies fail to protect the public's health, including my family. Some important elements identified are the lack of or slow response to the type of emergency, the lack of resources available to assist the public in environmental emergencies, and the lack of communication and community engagement due to language barriers. An Office on Environmental Justice at APCD will not only reinforce in achieving local objectives of emergency reduction, but it will support in the increase of community engagement and regain public trust in protecting communities of color and other vulnerable neighborhoods from environmental mistreatment and injuries. It's urgent APCD acquire strong leadership to aid in the implementation and supervision of environmental justice strategies. As a resident, collaborated in the AB 617 Community Air Protection Program Steering Committee I am requesting your support in hiring staff with experience in environmental issues, community organizing, and being multilingual. We need team players who understand the urgency of properly implementing EJ strategies, such as the implementation of the first AB 617 Community Emission Reduction Program in the County of San Diego. As a strong advocate in healing and protecting the health and wellness of our Portside environmental justice communities, I urge you to approve the request to hire environmental justice staff for APCD. Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher, for your support, and to the board for your time and attention.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1675. 1675.
Good morning. Greetings, San Diego County Board of Supervisors. My name is Joyce Lane, and I'm here today representing San Diego 350, a volunteer organization dedicated to preventing the worst impacts of climate change and climate injustice. And we represent about 10,000 members throughout the San Diego region. I'm here today to urge the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board to hire environmental justice staff. Hiring environmental justice staff will help with institutional transformation of the San Diego Air Pollution Control District Board and ensure equity and racial justice at the center of all agency decisions. Recently, a state audit of the APCD unveiled that the agency is inadequately able to respond to the needs of the communities suffering from toxic air pollution. It was no surprise that APCD failed to protect communities from the toxic fumes emitted from the USS Bonhomme Richard Navy ship fire. It is more crucial than ever that our county act to reduce exposure to pollution and improve the public health and safety of our most vulnerable communities. With the adoption of AB 423, we have a unique opportunity to restructure our San Diego Air Pollution Control Board to center equity and environmental justice at its core by hiring staff who are dedicated to improving the lives of those who have suffered for far too long. To better serve communities that have been disproportionately impacted by toxic pollution, the environmental justice staff must have a deep experience in environmental justice issues, and they should be knowledgeable about the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, skilled in community organizing, and should be bilingual. They should be equal or other comparable staff and have autonomy to make decisions. And the office should be sufficiently staffed and funded with comparable salaries. Please vote to protect our environmental justice communities from the emerging threats of toxic pollution and COVID-19 by hiring dedicated environmental justice staff. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6770. 6770.
Hi, good morning, Supervisors, Chairman Cox. My name is Rick Bates with Unite Here Local 30, representing more than 6,000 hotel and hospitality service workers throughout San Diego County. On behalf of Local 30, I urge you to direct the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District to hire environmental justice staff to ensure the equity and racial justice shapes its program and decision-making process. Local 30 is a diverse union, largely consisting of women, immigrants, Black and Indigenous, and people of color, who for decades have fought for economic and social justice in San Diego County. Today, Local 30 aligns with our brothers and sisters in our communities and as a member organization of the San Diego Green New Deal Alliance to advocate for institutional reform that reflects the interests of our most vulnerable and impacted communities where we live and raise our families. Those service industry workers have for decades made up the backbone of the travel and tourism economy that built San Diego. They live primarily in our South Bay neighborhoods and Portside communities, such as Barrio Logan and National City, where the air quality is disproportionately more dangerous to our children. Workers have always had to fight for economic and social justice and the right to health and safety, the right to healthy air and livable neighborhoods. But right now, that fight has been heightened by the historic unemployment levels in those same communities while simultaneously experiencing the highest rates of COVID-19 infection. Now, more than ever, we need equity in our health and in our air safety provisions for these communities. Therefore, please vote to protect our communities from the emerging threats of toxic pollution and COVID-19 by hiring dedicated environmental justice staff with real experience in actual environmental justice issues that are prevalent in our communities of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1925. Again, 1925.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Rita Clement. I live in Chula Vista. I'm speaking on behalf of San Diego 350 and the South Bay Eco Justice Team, and we are members of the San Diego Green New Deal Alliance. I strongly support the hiring of environmental justice staff at the Air Pollution Control District. As you know, San Diego was rated as the 6th worst city in air quality by the American Lung Association. Unfortunately, the adverse health impacts associated with toxic air pollution are disproportionately impacting low-income communities of color. To better protect the public health of our communities, the San Diego Air Pollution Control District must take sufficient measures to improve air quality. We must insist that air monitors be installed in disadvantaged and low-income communities first to capture data showing air quality conditions. Recently, a state audit revealed that APCD is unequipped to protect communities from the threat of toxic air pollution. As witnessed with the Navy USS Bonhomme Richard ship fire, APCD was underprepared to protect our most impacted communities from the toxic fumes. Hiring environmental justice staff, APCD, focus on environmental justice issues by putting attention and resources in communities that are more vulnerable to the risks and dangers of air pollution. To be successful, the environmental justice staff must be equally funded, have the autonomy to make decisions, and have support and leadership with expertise in the lived experiences of communities of color and environmental justice issues. Environmental justice communities have suffered for far too long. We need our County Board of Supervisors to direct our San Diego Air Pollution Control Officer to hire staff dedicated to environmental justice and addressing the needs of our communities burdened by toxic air pollution. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss this issue.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7441. Again, 7441.
Good morning. My name is Alejandro Amador, and I am the Community Air Program Supervisor at Casa Familiar. We are located in San Isidro, which is also a heavily impacted community by the air pollution. And we're in full support of the creation of an Office of Environmental Justice within the APCD in order to prioritize disadvantaged communities. An office within the APCD with voting power and leverage over decisions at the APCD is absolutely necessary to the instatement of this office, and one that works in collaboration with all other departments of the APCD. We have been able to see and appreciate the recent efforts from the APCD to address the issues of inequity, but this is not their expertise. Incorporating staff to offer this crucial lens to any current and future work carried out by the district is the next necessary step in order to have a more meaningful and impactful change in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1944. Again, 1944.
Greetings, San Diego County Board of Supervisors. My name is Sandy Naranjo, and I am the California Organizing Manager for Mothers Out Front. And I'm also a proud member of the AB 617 Steering Committee and a resident of District 1. I want to thank Supervisor Fletcher for leading on this issue and presenting this agenda item today. Hearing support from Harvard researcher Dr. Francesca Dominici, community leaders, teachers, and activists about why hiring of EJ staff is not just crucial in regulating air contaminants, but it's about saving lives. What we know in the San Diego region, that communities like Barrio Logan, National City, and San Isidro have high rates of air pollution and alarming rates of COVID-19 infections. These patterns are not isolated incidents, but rather connected to racist land use planning of the past. Recently, the Center for Disease Control released a report that unveiled that almost all of U.S. children and teen deaths from COVID-19 were either Black and Latino. The report made it clear that these deaths were not due because of the race, but because of racism. In order for us to advance the goals of the upcoming AB 617 Community Emissions Reduction Plan and to receive additional dollars for incentive funding from the state by engaging with those most impacted on collaborative efforts, we need to have dedicated staff who have experience in environmental justice issues and organizing. That's why today we have over 350 petition signatures and the support from the Environmental Health Coalition, AFT 1931, San Diego 350, Unite Here Local 30, Circulate San Diego, Sierra Club San Diego Chapter, Green New Deal Alliance, Climate Action Campaign, IBW 569, San Diego Pediatricians for Clean Air, Casa Familiar, Corona Enterprises, Sierra Club San Diego, Clean Air for Kids, Hammond Climate Solutions, Sunrise Movement of San Diego, and Mothers Out Front, California. We all urge you to please vote in protecting communities overburdened with toxic air pollution and improving their public health by voting yes and hiring environmental justice staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 3613.
Hi, Board of Supervisors. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk to you. You've heard the facts. You understand what the issues are, and certainly Supervisor Fletcher has made a really good job of bringing this issue forward. I'm going to speak to you from the place of I worked for Head Start as an advisor for many years, and I worked in Barrio Logan, I worked in National City, I worked in Logan Heights. I was appalled by the fact that 1 out of 3 children in our preschool program had asthma. That for each of those children, we had to have an inhaler on site in the classroom in case they went into attack, which happened more often than I care to even speak about. These neighborhoods require people to represent them who understand what the issues are, who have walked that road, who speak the language, who can interface with the communities in ways that are meaningful. So I urge you to hire some EJ staff who can really get into the middle of this and create a place for our city's most vulnerable residents to have a voice. Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, sorry. My name is Cherry Robinson. I live in Nathan Fletcher's district.
Thank you. Our next caller requested Spanish translation, 3734, 3734.
3734, adelante por favor.
If we don't hear from the callers, we'll come back to them.
Vamos a regresar a esta llamada si no escuchamos de esta persona.
We'll move on to 2953. 2953.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Alexander Hahn, and I'm with the Sunrise Movement San Diego, and I'm a resident of District 5. So yeah, all of you have heard the facts. We've heard that CDC said out of the 121 deaths that happened of young people under 21, 94 of those deaths came from Latinx, Black, and Native American children. And this is honestly really heartbreaking. They don't make up much of the composition of our population, but yet they are the ones who have suffered the most. And what we really need is people who live in these communities understand the issues, and we need to be hiring them to be the voice and to take care of the community. We need to be centering our society around justice. It's not justice to have these populations bearing this effect of the coronavirus. It's not justice for them to have these high rates of asthma. And so, just basically summarize, I really support this hiring of the environmental justice staff for the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8340. 8340.
Good morning. My name is Lucero Sanchez with San Diego Coastkeeper. I urge the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board to hire environmental justice staff. We need to ensure that there is a voice for low-income communities and communities of color who are disproportionately affected by poor air quality. Additionally, contaminants in the air find their way into stormwater and eventually pollute our oceans, rivers, and lakes. Environmental justice staff is needed to ensure that everyone gets the clean air and water they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7885. 7885.
My name is Carl Aldinger, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the San Diego chapter of the Sierra Club and its more than 40,000 members. We support the community emissions reduction plan, and more specifically, we recognize and support the need for professional environmental justice focused staffers. These staffers should be given the power to direct their resources and attention of the Air Pollution Control Board to address the needs of and to improve our marginalized communities first. For too long, our Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been subjected to the worst air quality. Our BIPOC communities' health have suffered and is still suffering the most as a result. We support the hiring of staffers who have proven experience organizing and working with our BIPOC communities and with strong background in environmental justice. The time is past due to move these advocates into leadership positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7641. 7641. And again, if we don't hear from you, we'll come back to you before we conclude testimony. Oh.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Malika Morrison. I'm speaking on behalf of Climate Action Campaign. Climate Action Campaign is a nonprofit based in Southern California that advocates for policies at the local level to fight the climate crisis. We are also members of the San Diego Green New Deal Alliance. Today, we urge the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board to vote to hire environmental justice staff. For far too long, working class communities of color have been disproportionately harmed and killed by environmental pollution and are now being disproportionately harmed and killed by the impacts of COVID-19 and harmed by the impacts of the climate crisis. This is no coincidence. Hiring of environmental justice staff is an important step to start undoing past and present harm to these communities and to plan for a more just, healthy, and prosperous zero carbon future. We echo the request that these staff members have a deep understanding of environmental justice issues and the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Thank you to Supervisor Fletcher for your leadership on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 1590. 1590.
Good morning.
I believe you may have muted
Good morning.
yourself. Good morning.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Bertha Rodriguez. I am calling on behalf of San Diego Green New Deal Alliance. The San Diego Green New Deal Alliance is a coalition of 46 organizations and small businesses dedicated to a zero carbon future in a way that creates good jobs and more just communities. Today, we urge the County of San Diego to hire dedicated environmental justice staff at the APCD with appropriate and sustainable resources to protect working class communities of color from environmental harm. By hiring environmental justice staff, we have an opportunity to integrate equity and environmental justice at the agency's core by ensuring that resources are prioritized in communities most vulnerable to the dangers of air pollution. Residents of San Isidro, Playa Logan, and other communities of color are silenced while their communities suffer with the worst air quality. We need systematic change and leadership with expertise on environmental justice issues. For these reasons, we urge the County of San Diego to hire dedicated environmental justice staff for the APCD. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll try the caller who needed Spanish translation again. 3734.
Quizás necesite presionar estrella 6 para que la podamos escuchar.
¿Ya me escuchan?
Sí, la escuchamos, señora. Yo voy a traducir para usted. Solo le pido que haga pausas para que la pueda traducir. Adelante.
Muchas gracias. Primeramente, una disculpa por la confusión de mi teléfono. Hola, mi nombre es Alicia Sánchez. Soy residente de National City y promotora de EHC.
Good morning. My name is Alicia Sanchez. I'm a resident of National City and I'm a promoter with ACC.
Ok, estoy aquí para pedirles que contraten a 2 personas para que se enfoquen en el tema de la justicia ambiental.
I'm here to ask you to please hire 2 staff to focus on environmental justice issues.
A nosotros nos está afectando mucho este ambiente contaminado a causa de los incendios.
We are being greatly affected by this polluted environment because of the fires.
Primeramente por el barco naval y con lo que está pasando en todo el condado de California.
First of all, because of the USS Bonhomme Richard ship fire, and then also because of what's happening in the entire state of California.
Eso ha afectado mucho la contaminación. Aquí en National City tenemos un alto porcentaje de personas con asma.
This has affected pollution very highly. Here in National City, we have a high number of people who suffer from asthma.
Yo en lo personal tengo a mi esposo delicado de salud. Él utiliza máscara para dormir y con el incendio de la naval, el filtro que pone en la máquina amanece negro.
I personally have my husband ill, and he needs a mask to sleep. He also, we also have to change a filter in our home that is constantly black because of the pollution.
Por los contaminantes que tenemos en el medio ambiente.
Because of the contaminants that we have in the environment.
Ahora con el COVID-19 ha sido muy difícil y peligrosa para muchas familias del condado de San Diego.
Now because of COVID-19, there's a lot more danger for a lot of families in San Diego County.
Especialmente para National City y Barrio Logan, ya que son una de las comunidades más afectadas por la contaminación.
Especially for National City and Barrio Logan, because they are 2 of the communities most affected by pollution.
Por favor, les pido que contraten a personas capacitadas en el área de la justicia ambiental para mejorar la salud de todos los residentes.
I please ask you to hire 2 people who are qualified to work on environmental justice issues for the well-being of all people.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes public testimony on this item. Chairman Cox.
Thank you very much. Again, we appreciate all the public communication speakers. Before we get into the board discussion, my understanding, Supervisor Fletcher, is you have a brief video to show also.
We do, Chairman Cox, and we're going to highlight the video. And I want to thank all the callers who called in. The voices we're hearing calling for equity and a focus on these justice issues really reflect the same voices we heard before this county when this board voted to dedicate staff, a specific staff number, in fact, to tackle issues of racial equity in county operations. And now we're hearing the same voices to address the same need for a different governing entity, the Air Pollution Control District. And so we have certainly done this exact action in the past, and I think it's appropriate we do it now in our responsibilities, the APCD. And I'd like to go to the video to highlight some additional voices of folks who were not able to call in today, but whose voices we certainly want to be heard. If we could play the video.
Greetings, San Diego County Board of Supervisors. My name is Francesca Dominici. I am a professor of biostatistics at the Harvard THN School of Public Health and a co-director of the Harvard Data Science Initiative. I wanted to urge the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board to hire environmental justice staff. Hiring dedicated environmental justice staff will help with institutional transformation of the San Diego Air Pollution Control District Board and ensure equity and racial justice at the center of all agency decisions. According to the Cal Environmental Screen 3.0, neighbors such as the Barrio Logan of the western part of National City rank in the top 5 to 15% most polluted neighbors in California. And recently, the American Lung Association ranked San Diego as having the 6th worst air quality in the country. The environmental inequities that exist in environmental justice community increase the risk of death from COVID-19. A recent research on mine, a recent Harvard study that I have led, shows, and we found that community with long-term exposure to toxic air pollution and specifically fine particulate matter have an 8 to 11% increased chance of dying from the complication of COVID-19 than someone living with in a county with 1 unit less of fine particulate matter. A recently state audit of the APCD unveiled that the agency is inadequately able to respond to the needs of the community suffering from toxic air pollution. So it was no surprise the APCD failed to protect communities from the toxic fumes emitted from the USS-borne Richard Navy ship fire. So for the solution, I think it's more crucial than ever that our county act to reduce exposure to pollution and improve the public health and safety of our communities. With the adoption of the AB 423, we have a unique opportunity to restructure the San Diego Air Pollution Control Board to center equity and environmental justice at its core by hiring staff who are dedicated to improving the lives of those who have suffered for far too long. So, bottom line is, based on my very extensive research on the adverse health effect of pollution and environmental injustice, to better serve communities that have disproportionately impacted by toxic pollution, the environmental justice staff must have staff and leadership with deep experience in environmental justice issues, and so that is also knowledgeable about the lived experience of Black, Indigenous, and people of colors, skilled in community organization, and are bilingual. Be equal to other comparable staff and have autonomy to make decisions, and be sufficiently staffed and funded with comparable salary. So I hope that with my comments, I am enticing you to vote to protect our community from the emerging threats of toxic pollution and COVID-19 by hiring a dedicated environmental justice staff. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Fletcher, do you have any additional comments?
San Diego. Mi nombre es María Villanueva. Soy parte de Madres al Frente. Como residente de San Isidro, pido a la Junta de Control de Contaminación del Aire en San Diego que contraten personal comprometido con la justicia ambiental y así asegurar justicia racial y equidad en las decisiones de esta agencia. En el vecindario de Barrio Logan y el oeste de National City están en un rango alto de contaminación. Esto incrementa riesgos altos de muerte por COVID-19. Hace poco una auditoría que se hizo en APCD, siglas en inglés, revela que la agencia no está preparada a responder a las necesidades de las comunidades que sufren por la contaminación. El condado debe de actuar para reducir esta contaminación que existe, para mejorar la salud y bienestar pública de las comunidades. Con la adopción AB 423 tenemos esa oportunidad de hacerlo. Hay que reestructurar nuestra Junta de Control de Contaminación del Aire en San Diego. Hay que contratar personal que se dedique a mejorar la vida de las personas que han sufrido por este motivo por mucho tiempo. Por favor, les pido que su voto sea para apoyar a comunidades de las amenazas de la contaminación tóxica por COVID-19.
My name is Dr. Sara Valladolid. Thank you for taking your time to listen to this. I was born and raised here in San Diego and have been practicing pediatrician in the South County for over 10 years. I wanted to talk to you today about the importance of our county acting today to reduce the exposure of pollution and to improve the public health and safety of our communities. As a pediatrician, I see the effects of air pollution every day with the high burden of asthma in my patients. Please vote to protect our communities from the emerging threats of toxic pollution by hiring dedicated environmental justice staff. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sabrina, and I take care of children in South San Diego. I support hiring of environmental justice staff because children of all color deserve to breathe clean air.
I'm Dr. Naomi Lawrence-Reed, and I'm a pediatrician in San Diego. I take care of newborn babies all the way up to adolescents and nearing adults. I've seen firsthand the effects of climate change as it relates to toxic air pollution, and especially the way it affects communities of color. We really need to work on hiring dedicated environmental justice staff that is familiar and sympathetic to these effects, that they are effective in community organizing and powerful in their message to make San Diego healthier and a safer place to live for all communities. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to mask up.
My name is Dr. V. Thuy Nguyen, and I'm co-founder of San Diego Pediatricians for Clean Air. I'm a general pediatrician who takes care of 2,000 children who live in the South County, which includes Chula Vista, National City, San Ysidro, and South San Diego. My pediatric patients bear a higher burden of disease, especially asthma and allergies, due to air pollution. I've practiced pediatrics for over 15 years, and I am the last one to want to be involved in politics. But year after year, seeing my office disproportionately flooded with severe asthmatics requiring breathing treatments, oral steroids, and admission to the pediatric hospital floor or the intensive care unit, there's only so much a pediatrician can do. And at some point, I need to say something. And I am saying it now with 20 other pediatric colleagues that are part of the San Diego Pediatricians for Clean Air. Environmental justice communities have suffered far too long, and we need our County Board of Supervisors to direct the San Diego Air Pollution Control Officer to hire staff dedicated to environmental justice and addressing the needs of our communities burdened by toxic air pollution. Thank you.
Hello, County Board of Supervisors. My name is David Flores. I am the Air Quality Program Director at Environmental Health Coalition, a homeowner in West Chula Vista, and father to a child that has been diagnosed with asthma. I urge you today as an Air Pollution Control Board to hire environmental justice staff. For the last 10 years, I've been working to connect the needs and gaps of air quality data monitoring for some of our most disadvantaged communities, the communities of National City, Barrio Logan, and San Ysidro along the border. Information from CalEnviroScreen shows that for Barrio Logan and National City, these communities are suffering the highest rates of diesel air pollution in the region, ranking at the 95 to 99th percentile for the entire state of California. Information from the Air Pollution Control District presents that for the border communities of San Ysidro and Otay Mesa, those are consistently presenting the highest rate of particulate matter and black carbon in the air We need environmental justice staff at APCD with the right resources to protect communities of color and other vulnerable communities from environmental harms. We need staff that understands and are dedicated to helping our region address the air quality disparities in these communities, to ensure equity, racial justice for these communities through the work that we do with air. We have all experienced with this pandemic what it feels like when our intake of air is impeded in a way that you just cannot fill your lungs without forcing your body to catch a breath. These communities are suffering the highest rate of COVID in our county, and they need your help. I urge you, please vote to hire environmental justice staff and add capacity to the Air Pollution Control District in working with our most disadvantaged communities. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Hi, I'm Jim Miller, a Vice President of the American Federation of Teachers Local 1931. And we support the hiring of more EJ staff at the county level because we believe the conditions in which students live are the conditions in which they learn. And many of our students live in areas like Barrio Logan and the western edge of National City that are amongst the top 5 to 15% most polluted communities in the state of California. So having a county with the ability to address these issues is crucially important if we want to serve the communities that our students live in. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alexa, a youth climate leader with San Diego 350 and a student at Hilltop High School in Chula Vista. San Diego 350 strongly supports county supervisors in hiring environmental justice staff. For far too long, Black and Brown communities have suffered disproportionately from air pollution and toxins in our environment. And now, these very same communities are the ones bearing the brunt of COVID infections. Hiring environmental justice staff will help ensure that communities like mine have access to healthy, safe environments. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Malika Marsden. I am co-director of policy at Climate Action Campaign. For far too long, Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been disproportionately harmed by the dangerous impacts of environmental pollution and are now disproportionately harmed by the dangerous impacts of the climate crisis. This is no coincidence and no accident. Our local government has responsibility to do everything it can to ensure that equity and environmental justice are centered moving forward and to address past and present harm that have been done to these communities. An important step forward is to ensure that the restructuring of the APCD meaningfully centers equity and environmental justice, which is why we strongly believe that the San Diego County Air Pollution Control Board hire environmental justice staff. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Micah Matrosky, environmental organizer with IBEW Local 569. We support environmental justice staff at the Air Pollution Control District. Our EJ communities need a strong voice at APCD. This is the right thing to do, and we urge the county to please vote yes and move this forward.
Hello, Board of Supervisors. This is Noah Harris with Climate Action Campaign. I'm speaking today to urge you to hire environmental justice staff to the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District. Hiring dedicated environmental justice staff is necessary to ensure that equity and racial justice are at the center of every district decision. The recent California State Auditor's report showed that San Diego's ozone levels are far beyond the federal standard, posing dangerous health impacts to the public. Additionally, the American Lung Association ranked San Diego as having the 6th worst air quality in the country. We also know that the climate crisis and environmental injustices have and will impact frontline communities first and worst. CalEnviroscreen shows that neighborhoods such as Barrio Logan in the western portion of National City are in the top 5 to 15% most polluted neighborhoods in all of California. The disproportionate impacts of toxic air quality on low-income communities and communities of color is absolutely unacceptable, and our elected leaders have the responsibility to secure clean, safe air for every resident. Please vote to protect our environmental justice communities from the threats of pollution by hiring dedicated environmental justice staff. Thank you.
Supervisor Fletcher, is there any other comments you want to make before we get into discussion?
No, motion in a second, and hope we can take this positive step forward.
Okay. Vice Chairman Desmond, you had some comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, I need to express that I am not in favor of the Green New Deal. I just want to express that. I'm also not in favor of hiring from the dais. And I am in favor of clean air, clean water for everybody, but hiring from the dais to me is something we should not be doing. We're policymakers. I also want to point out that the American Lung Association and their rankings of the most polluted cities, they've got three major criteria for ranking cities. One is by ozone, one is by year-round particle pollution, and one is by short-term particle pollution. Those three main criteria, San Diego region is #1 by ozone. By year-round particle pollution, not even in the top 25, and by short-term particle pollution, not even in the top 25. So the speaking points of that we heard that we're #6 in ranking throughout the country, that's I guess if you're only picking one criteria, but the Lung Association uses 3. I can't support the recommendation. Primarily, I agree with the spirit of the board letter, but not in the implementation. We're policymakers. We should not be hiring from the dais, nor, and I realize there's speaking points from all the callers, we're not actually hiring. It says we're actually directing staff assignment modifications. That's not our job. Our job is to set the policy and direction, not staffing assignments or staffing assignment modifications. So I can't support the recommendation 1A or recommendation 1 or 1A, which assigns existing deputy director and program coordinator with the Air Pollution Control District to new job duties. Again, we are policymakers. We create policy. We allow the executives of the departments to determine the best way, in their professional opinions, how to execute our policy, and that includes staffing. I don't know if this is the best approach or not, to reassign these 2 staff members or give them new duties. I'm not even sure what their current duties are. This seems to be reaching down too deep in the hierarchy, and I have full confidence in the staff to fulfill policy. And quite frankly, item under A, you have, there's item I and double I. Those are policies. I could support I and double I, but not how they get carried out, because I and double I are policies. How they get carried out is up to the department head, or we're not supposed to be getting our hands that far down into the into management or assignment. So I have full confidence that staff will fulfill policy, and that we and fulfill and comply with the state mandates, AB 617. If we have to comply with it, we have to comply with it. Let staff figure that out. So I'm not going to be supporting of it, item 1A here of the item, primarily because this is out of our realm as far as changing or modifying staff assignments. We set policy. Thank you very much. You're muted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I seconded the motion, and I support the motion that's on the floor. I understand what Supervisor Vice Chairman Desmond is saying, but I think in this instance, I think we do have, without any doubt, some disparities in this county. There are certain elements or certain areas in our county where there is a much stronger likelihood that children are going to be raised in an environment where they're subjected to poor air quality, resulting in asthma and other respiratory problems. And I think we should be doing whatever we can in order to address that. Certainly, we have some mandates coming up with AB 617 and the steering committee that is a part of that. And I think we should take specific action to make sure that we begin developing those plans that can begin to address this disparity that has existed for far too long. So with that, I'm gonna second the motion, and I certainly support the motion.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, I agree that we need to do those things, and we set that policy. But we'll let staff implement it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just briefly address a few of the things raised?
Supervisor Fletcher?
Yeah, it's a little surprising to hear that we should not be dedicating staff to specific purposes, given on June 23rd, this board, including Supervisor Desmond, voted unanimously to specifically hire county staff for a specific purpose, outlining exactly all of the things that they should do to tackle issues of racial equity. All we're doing here is the exact same thing we already unanimously did, but for a different body. And the challenge that we're having in addressing these issues is that there is not the dedicated expertise staff around an issue that is vital and core and central to the mission of APCD. And I can appreciate someone saying they have full confidence that everything's going to be done fine, but you ought to read the state audit. Because the state audit might have you take a pause in a moment and question the attentiveness we have at the oversight for this entity. And I suspect the coming Air Resources Board audit is not going to be any different. In fact, I think it'll be more. And I think it's time that we reach in and tell these communities who are crying out for help and a focus on environmental justice that it's worth 1% of the staff of the agency to be dedicated and focused on a core central mission of the agency. And so we have to do it to fulfill with these things. We have to do it because we know we have discrepancies. We need to do it because there's a lack of expertise. And I think as a policy-making board, we need to set the direction and tone and priorities for what we think is important. We've done it just in the recent past. It wasn't that long ago. And I think it is not only appropriate, I think in light of the audits that have come out of the challenges we face, everyone you've heard from today, I think it is vital that we take this very modest step forward.
Okay, is there any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
No.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes with Vice Chairman Desmond voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
Very good. Well, thank you for your attendance today and the presentations and the speakers we've had. This concludes our board agenda for September 30th. The next regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Supervisors is on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020 at 9 a.m. Mr. Clerk, is there anything else that you need to cover before we adjourn?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, we will stand adjourned then till Tuesday, October 13th at 9 a.m. Meeting's adjourned.